do not go into a job thinking about money. Because if you go into a job thinking about money, you're not gonna get the most out of it. If you go into a job loving it, being passionate about it, you're gonna get everything you got coming out of it. But if you go into that job saying, I'm gonna make a whole lot of money, this job's gonna pay me this, you ain't gonna get nothing out of it. You have to love it first. And I felt like I've always loved rap more than I love money. I love rap more than I love anything. That's why I built this facility so I could work whenever I want.
So I tell women this all the time. All men can change and all men will change. But there's only one woman that we're going to change for. It's just one. We don't change for all women. We only change for one woman. If he ain't changing, it's because you ain't the one. That ain't living.
The time is now. The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.
What's happening right now inside everybody is they're going, who am I? And they're depressed. And they go like, why am I depressed? Well, it's because you're trying to be something for the world, you know? And as soon as you let that go, better things happen because they're just happening, but it's not, now it's just sadness. Sadness comes, happiness comes, it's weather that flies by in the sky. It doesn't sit on you long enough to drown you.
I think the hardest lesson a young person has to learn in their 20s is you are not the main character in everybody's story.
Wow.
You're the main character in your own.
Make it so that when people remember you, they smile, that they were touched by you in a way that really left them with something to cherish. If you have that, then you continue to live inside the hearts and minds of others.
In the end, when you lose somebody, every candle, every prayer is not going to make up for the fact that the only thing that you have left is a hole in your life where that somebody that you cared about used to be.
If I were to do this, or if I were to give you, are you strong enough? Are you capable of being someone that's going to be in my life? That's how I approach things now. And I'm not being conceited. I'm saying it's actually an honor to be with me because I think I'm a great person and I love people deeply and I won't tolerate ever being treated the way that I had been.
I remember working with someone who was driving this really long drive to work. And I learned as part of working with her that she loved music, loved listening to music. And then it just came up that she never turned the music on in the car.
Why not?
I'm like, well, it was going on a long drive, right? Because she didn't want to block the narrative in her head.
The negative narrative.
Right, the negative narrative that was like, you're worth nothing. Because there was the feelings that was, in her mind, justified, right? That was the justifiable self-punishment for what? For being hurt by other people. So the first prescription I wrote was turn music on in car, right? and then as she became more aware, she's like, right, there's like a whole story in my head. And that story plays over and over and over again, and it plays over in that summarized manner. You're not worth anything. No one will ever love you. There's a lot of people like this whose lives have really, really changed. Once you're like, wait, that's actually not my story, right? And logic tells me something different, but logic hasn't had one thing to say about it. It's all been through emotion. So let's talk about that emotion, reconstruct the narrative, and then it's remarkable how much better things can get because it's not a hocus pocus, right? It's a way towards what's actually true. There's a simplicity to it.
Find out what you're good at, and I don't care if you're an interviewer or the greatest chef or whatever. Find out what you truly enjoy doing and do it. It's not always about just making money, but take that God-given talent that He gave you, because I believe everybody has a talent that they're better at that than the majority of the other people.
The worst thing in life, the worst feeling of all, is to feel that you wasted your potential, that you had dreams and you never even tried them, and then you're in your 50s or 60s, you're facing death. why was I alive? I didn't do it. I could have done this, that, or that. Never even tried. Remind yourself of that.
And he said, let the world close the doors you're not meant to walk through and walk through the ones that remain open. And what I realized is most of us are just not opening up enough doors because we think we only have the option of 2 doors. We look at life as binary, 0 and 1, 0 and 1, right? It's just
this or
A
that,
or B,
yeah.
this or that. I don't think life is ever this or that. It's like this, that, and maybe that, and that. And there's always a gap.
For me, I find that an equal amount, if not more growth, comes from simply stepping into the unknown. Like that's the best teaching tool for me. And it's always been the way that I've gotten the most like growth.
If you listen deeply to that other person and they reveal their secret desires and what they're not getting from the world, just take that in and go, if I give her a gift or take her to a place that fills that very thing that she said she's not getting, man, that'll have such a powerful effect on that person. Even if you've been in a relationship for 2 or 3 years. And I've been in a relationship for decades, I'm afraid I have to admit. And you still have to go through that process.
Really?
Yeah.
If you are going to school, what your parents will say? You must be number 1. If you are number 1, what about all the other 30, 40 kids who are there? They must be below you.
They're losers.
They're losers. So your joy is only in other people failing. When your joy is about other people's misery, that's not joy, that is sickness.
This moment is preparing me for something amazing that hasn't happened yet. That saying, which I deeply believe, because life is the greatest school you will ever attend, that there's always a skill or an experience or a life lesson or a person that I have gained in every horrible thing that's ever happened to me or because of me, that has prepared me for something amazing that's coming. If you wake up in the morning and you're breathing, and you're standing in front of that mirror, and you have survived the stuff you have survived, and you are still waking up and trying to do better, you not only deserve a high five, you need it. Tough love is a bunch of baloney. What really fuels people, particularly when you're going through a challenge, is feeling celebrated, seen, and supported. And the research bears it out.
And what do you say to the 25-year-olds who feel like they're behind? They haven't made it yet.
I mean, I got socks in my drawer that I still wear that are 25 years old. I mean, you're 25 and feeling like you haven't made it yet has got to be a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
But it's the whole process of arriving at, your secret power, your superpower, your secret sauce takes time. It's more about finding out what you're good at and what you can serve other people, what they would benefit from your having served to them. And that takes time for a lot of people. And that takes this willingness to go down a path and commit for sure, but then be okay with an outcome that's less than positive and just move on to the next thing.
You know what makes relationships better? True realness, vulnerability, people living their truth, people being more real, being more upfront, more direct. You know what makes you more attractive on a date? Being more real. Not going there and people worry about their hair and like, is this all right? Tell a real fucking story on the date. You want to talk about deep attraction, not surface level bullshit. Deep attraction, the kind of attraction that gets relationships, comes from real stories.
Failure is part of life. I mean, the difference for me though is I look at failure as a stepping stone to success. It's a speed bump. I know I'm going to fail, but it's not failure if you learn something. And so, gosh, I've made so many mistakes. I've screwed so many things up, but every time I do, it becomes a way for me to explain to someone else what it takes.
The whole universe opens up to you once you're able to put yourself in the mindset and the point of view of other people, enter their spirit. That's the single greatest step you can have. So you're about to start your first job and you're all insecure and you're all worried about you and what people think about you. Try and make that switch and don't think about yourself and try and figure out, what is your boss like? What is he or she? What is motivating them? What are their insecurities? What are their doubts? And suddenly you're going to navigate this social environment in a much different level.
You say you put your mind to something and then you can achieve it. And I think you have to keep, and you talk about this, growing and challenging yourself, because when you get to a place that you've accomplished something, it's really important to spread out and do different things and challenge yourself.
Constantly grow.
Yeah.
If we're not growing, we're slowly going down.
Yep, I agree.
You should always win the relationship, even if you lose the sale. If you focus on making sales, there's wins and losses. If you focus on building relationships, there's only wins.
Instead of constantly thinking who's the right person I'm going to find, why don't you ask yourself, who do you want to be? Ask, who will I be as a partner? Who have I been till now in my relationships? How have I shown up? What is it that I do? Not just, finding the right person.
If something happens and you're overwhelmed with shame, the first thing you need to do is get back on your emotional feet. Don't talk, text, or type to anyone, because one of the things we want to do is push that shit out on other people.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah. So just get into a dark, quiet place and then talk to yourself like you talk to someone you love.
What we crave in life is what we did or didn't get from our parents. What our parents did give us is what we continue to crave, or what they didn't give us is what we continue to crave. So you'll find that most people's love languages that they chase are things that their parents didn't give them. So if their parents didn't give them time, they now crave everyone's time. If their parents didn't give them gifts, they crave gifts. If their parents didn't give them acts of service, they're craving those acts of service. So it's because of our childhood.
For a child, whatever you say is also an imprint. I love you because you're beautiful is an imprint which reads as, and if I wasn't, you wouldn't. I love you because you're smart. You're a grade A student. I love you is like, oh, if I wasn't, you wouldn't. And so you have to say to your kids, I love you because you're you. I love you, I'll always love you. I don't love your behavior, by the way. I don't love the fact that you just hit your brother. That's not good. I'm really unhappy about that. I love you, but I don't love your behavior. And if you can bring your children up to separate your love for them from how they behave, they feel safe. And feeling safe is a need. I'm safe. There's nothing my mommy would ever do that would stop her loving.
A lot of people feel they're burnt out because they're doing too much. I think you're doing too little of the things that make you feel alive. You're doing too little of the things that really matter in your life.
If you lose, cry for a day. If you win, celebrate for a day.
Yeah, that's it.
And then move on the next day, get back to training.
Don't live in the past.
Don't live in the past. And what we do is when we lose, we cry for a month. And when we win, we just move on.
Yeah.
Which means that our negative experiences hold us back and weigh us down more than our positive experiences. So we're actually allowing, because we don't immerse ourselves in winning and growth, we only submerge ourselves in negative experiences.